The world changed for us all in March 2020, with life and camp and business becoming more stressful and challenging than ever before. But what does not kill us makes us stronger. Diamonds are formed under pressure, right, Tiff? I saw that on your Facebook thing, right? Success comes from learning from our failures. I could go on, but you get the point. Guess what, kids? Life is tough. And running a camp has tremendous challenges. And the more we overcome these challenges, the stronger we become as camp directors, as leaders, and as people. This is the Day Camp Pod. Welcome back, my friends, to the Day Camp Podcast. I'm Andy Pritikin, Director of Liberty Lake in the Philly suburbs of New Jersey.
I'm Sam Thompson from Crystal Lake Park District, Crystal Lake, Illinois.
I'm Tiffany Gratton-McDuffie, founder of Purposeful Play, both in Milwaukee, Wisconsin and Chicago, Illinois.
We are Day Camp Pros dedicated to the professional development of our colleagues, discussing topics and best practices that can improve our organizations and ourselves. So it's our 50th episode. Sam, you've been with me all 50. Tiff jumped on this year, doing great. We love you. So our producer, Matt, and, the Go Camp Pro team with Travis, they were like, well, it's 50, it's a big deal and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, you know what? We've done more than 50 because we got these mini pods. So, let's be real. It's more than 50. But anyway, it is a big deal. Everywhere we go, in the camp world, we go to conferences and stuff, and Zooms and things. People are like, oh, I love that podcast, this and that. We're really grateful for all the people listening. And, we were trying to think, what could we do special for the 50th? We've had so many great guests. We bring Michael Brandwein back for a third time. I mean, I don't know. So we were just thinking, like, in the time that we're in right now, in this, running a camp in a pandemic time, right? And the uncertainty and the unprecedented and blah, 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 blah. We're like, we're thinking that, the trials and tribulations that we're all going through, the rough stuff that we're all happening, those of us who are forging forward, who are really putting our nose to the grindstone and making it work, it's happening, right? As much as people are worried about things, kids are signing up for camp, staff are signing up to work at camp. People are getting sick and tired of this pandemic, and they want to move on, and they want their kids outside, and they want their kids playing, and they want, they're just bored, right? We had a problem, as I've been saying, before the pandemic with screens and technology. And now the kids are forced to stare at screens and have technology all the time, right? Older kids, these middle school and high school kids, they're getting the option if they want to come to school or not go to school. Man, they're just rolling out of bed and half watching on the Zoom, right? It's a tough situation. This summer is going to be very interesting for us and all. But I don't know. That was my thought. You got any thoughts on that, ladies?
Yeah, I just think that, well, first, I'm so grateful that you all have me as the newbie of the crew. It has certainly been an awesome experience thus far. And yeah, the pandemic is wild, and I think it is a test of, like we were just talking about, of resilience and grit and doing what you got to do so you can do what you want to do, and pushing through the times. And I think it's not just for us as adults. We certainly are feeling that, but our kids are having to adjust in the same exact way. And so it is our responsibility, I think, as adults to kind of lead the way and set the tone that we still got to get up and do the things, and not just, roll out of bed and barely be on the Zoom, but really, one thing I've been saying to kids is like, you're in college early, like this is your college. And so, just that constant motivation. And it's hard to do that for others when we are feeling the same drudgery ourselves, right? Like, I know last March when this first happened, I did not think that we would still be in this. Like, what?
No.
And even, and I think this is very much like that American privilege, where even when we first heard about it and it was everywhere else, I didn't think it was coming for us, and it's come for us hot and heavy. And so I think even as crazy as it's been, and with the residual effects that we will all feel, that we have made it, right? And we, for people who didn't, succumb to it, have made it. Yes. And it's been a test to show us that we can do hard things, adults, kids, all of us. So it's global, and it has shown us that when tough tough times don't last, tough people do, even though this tough time seems to be giving us a run for our money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So being the oldest here, probably, I've started mentoring a little bit, and it's made me stop and think about, what I went through and how I got here and what worked and what didn't work. And so I love this subject because that's usually what the people that want to be mentored want to talk about is how did you get through something? So this will be fun.
Yeah. And what we saw last summer is that the camps that opened, most of them had people at the helm who had been through stuff, right? Who had sort of weathered some storms, so that this may have been the biggest storm, but they had built up some muscles in the grit and resiliency area already. So anyway, I'm going to start. We're going to go a little round robin on this, okay? And I think a lot of camp professionals, their war stories always begin with my first summer at, right? So my first summer at North Shore Day Camp on Long Island in, like, I don't know, 96 or 97, I don't even remember at this point. I was lifted out of the education world, right? I was trying to make it as a professional musician, and I got my master's in education so I could be a rock star, right? And it's like Clark Kent during the day teaching, and then at night I was trying to be Superman. And then my band broke up, and I cut off my dreadlocks, and the next thing you know, I was just a teacher. And no offense to teachers, but that's not what I necessarily planned on doing for the next 40 years of my life. So I got swooped into camping by this Ben Applebaum fella, and he was the main owner at 7 high-end amazing camps in the New York metropolitan area, and he put me mainly, especially like from March through the summer, at this camp that that he had overpaid for, that was strapped financially, that needed a ton of work, that had lots and lots of issues organizationally and just human resource wise, let's say. And so he sticks me there. I'm like 27 years old. Okay. And with a couple other people, another like a 25-year-old, 23-year-old. And we're like, yeah, we're going to save the day. And it was such a mess on so many levels, like the program and everything. Oh, like I didn't get any sleep, for weeks on end. And we ended up actually enrolling a ton more kids. Like we almost doubled the enrollment, but we didn't have the infrastructure for it. And it just ended up just wearing us down. And then the first week of camp, this guy, Ben Applebaum, this legendary camp figure in the Northeast, he dies of a brain hemorrhage, right? And in his mid 50s. And it's just, he was like the guy that we all looked to. When we were all feeling like, oh my God, what we're going to do, Ben would, turn us around and get us back on the right path. So that was rough, and that was one of those things you just have to sort of compartmentalize. And I don't know, my life sort of tells me that guys are pretty good at compartmentalizing sometimes, not thinking about stuff. So I use that. So I'm forging forward the next week. Okay. And our head of swim that I had just hired a couple of months ago, got accused by one of our staff people who had their daughter in camp of child abuse, of basically molesting her daughter, right? My head of swim, right? Did I mention I was 27 years old at this time? Right. So so that was a really, really, really rough summer on all ends. Again, lack of sleep. I mean, one of my highlights that summer, we had horses and a llama. I think they had saved a llama from the dog food factory, and this llama used to escape. And I would get a phone call at like 5 a.m. from the local police saying, "Andy, the llama's out again." And I'd have to run down the street and track down a llama. Okay. So anyway, year one at North Shore. All right. When I tell people about the story, I see the gray hairs I have right here. That's what they're from, right? That's all my premature things. So, and after that summer, I really felt like any summer at camp I would be able to handle, because it was just such a shit show on so many levels. Anyway, so that's my number one. All right, grit and resiliency. I'll hand it off. Sam, go for it.
Well, you got thrown into the deep end of the pool.
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy. Well, my hardest one is actually for organizations. So it doesn't have to be a park district. It could be scouts or a medical organization that runs camps. But if you work for an organization where you have people above you, I had 2 positions above me, and I've lived through 4 directors and 7 superintendents in the time I've been here.
Wow.
And going through all these different people above you and their leadership style and still hanging in there and still getting, what you want to get done and trying to stay on the cutting edge of everything. Most of them left me alone and let me do that, because they knew I was kind of wanting to do it on my own. I didn't have to be told that you have to do evaluations or anything like that. Then I get a boss who came in with her own agenda and wanted to clean house, just completely fire everyone in our entire department,
Oh boy.
because she wanted to hire her friends from her old place. And she succeeded with most people. I was the only one left. And basically, after 28 years of being here and developing my camp to where I wanted it to be, I was like, I'm not leaving because of your whim. So my core staff hung in with me, and it became me protecting them from her trying to get rid of them, and still trying to do the best job that we could do or whatever. Um, After 6 years, she got fired
Yeah.
because she started to treat people above her the way she had treated us all along. Um, so anyway, you will run into at some point in your life a boss who inexplicably doesn't like you or has their own agenda. And the only way to get through it is to stay with your core values and stay with what you know is right. And you can do all the little stuff, however they want to restructure things. I could handle doing it her way. I could play her game, but I wasn't going to give up the whole program. I wasn't
Yeah.
going to let it go down the tubes. So that balancing act, you learn a lot of lessons, and you
Yeah,
just
well, I think there's a lot of people who live their lives for many years, many more than 6 in many cases, under boss situations that are just awful.
yeah,
And you think about it, you spend more time, way more time at work than you do at home, right? And to wake up every single morning and go into that situation, and I had that in my first camp story. There was a little bit of that situation as well, where it was just it becomes torturous, right? And it becomes something that's just omnipresent, and you're going to sleep at night and you're thinking about it, and you wake up in the morning and you're thinking about it. Like, it sucks.
yep.
So I hand it to you for sticking it out for 6 years. That's your old school values there, Sam, that you wouldn't
And
give in. I think I
right.
think a 35-year-old Sam in 2021 would be the hell out of there. you know, well, because
Right.
people just think more selfishly now.
Right, right. I was like, bring it. We can do this. And I have to admit that she kept me on my toes. I learned a lot from her. I I feel like I'm more capable of everything because I had to be capable of everything. And she actually wrote a long letter when she left saying that she had also grown. So when the torture was finally over, we both came out of it better people or better workers or whatever. Not that I'm advertising staying in situations. You still have to do a pros and cons. And if you are that young person and the pros outweigh the cons, or the cons outweigh the pros, don't feel like you have to stay in a bad situation.
Yeah. No, it's great if you can learn from it. I think
Right.
the word I always think of is toxic. If it's a
Yeah.
toxic situation, you got to get out of there. Because then like I said, it goes through your body, it goes through your bloodstream. It just becomes everything, and it just starts eating you up from the inside, and that is just not healthy. We're
Yeah.
only on this planet one time. We gotta, we
I
can't,
I I went on blood pressure medicine while she was here,
oh
and I went off
man.
it when she left, and I don't have to
Oh
use it
boy.
anymore. So, yeah, it really does affect you, even if you don't. If you're doing okay mentally, it does affect you physically.
Yeah. Well, Tiff, you were in the real world. Do you have any crappy bosses? You had to have, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's why I quit them all. That's my own thing. So I've been in entrepreneurial space since 2004. So I'm a ways gone from corporate. And I never really had rude people, just people who counted you out, and that's probably why I couldn't make it, there. They just I'm not, yeah, y'all know me. I'm not cut out for people to just treat me bad and to take it. And I think, Sam, though, I think it is well, to Andy's point, I thank God that people have come full circle, and you know, the corporate world may see it as selfish, but no, it's like self-preservation. And you know, like he said, you spend more time at work than you do anywhere. And so to be miserable at work, you know, whether or not we think we're doing mentally well, it's just like um a turn has happened where it's no longer strength to see how long you can persist in a toxic situation. It's now strength to chuck the deuces to that toxic situation and be like, nope, I'm gonna do something different. Don't get me wrong. There are plenty of hard things that I have stuck through and dug through that tax me mentally. And sometimes, especially when you're young, you don't even feel the physical ramifications that are coming from it. But I thank again, God, that we are at a day where there's no strength in that. You know what I mean? The strong, courageous thing is choosing something different. And that's not to like, I can say it now because I'm in that space, but it's scary. It's hard. It's not easy to do, especially when you're growing a career. So no, I applaud you for that. And I definitely know that I've stayed in some situations far longer, you know, than I should have. And I'm just glad you're off the meds and that you
Yeah.
run the joint now, you know.
Well, part of it was I felt a responsibility to my staff that had already been with me 28 years, and
And
this
you were
was their
protecting them.
Yeah.
careers.
Now, 28
Yeah.
years is a chunk of time. There's
Yeah,
no
this
doubt
was
about
their
it.
life, their careers too. And so any decision I made, I was thinking about the whole group as a
And that's
whole.
the other thing, like just as women, we're very much nurturing and
Sure.
you know, and self-sacrificial for the whole. And not necessarily, you know, again, you enjoyed your work. It wasn't like the full thing was just toxic, but it just speaks to what we see happening everywhere these days. My crazy story though would be more so self-inflicted. You know, everybody knows pretty much that I'm like the accidental camp director, accounting background, financial services, sport enthusiast, but never like I ran track in high school, but I quit every single year because I didn't want my hair to get wet. It was ridiculous. It was like, oh wait, you want me to run in the rain? Oh yeah, well, I guess and she knew I had skills, so every year she'd let me back on, but every year I quit because I'm not running in the rain. Um, I'm beyond that now. And I think if I had had a stronger coach, you know, my track career would have been better, but just sport enthusiast. And so really just entrepreneur to the core. And I remember my husband and I at the time owned a bunch of residential rental properties and the market crashed. And so we were just like, all right, do we go back to work or do we there's all this rhetoric then about do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And so we're just like, or do we, you know, do what we love? And we love sports and he loved sports and I loved kids and I loved creating businesses. And so we found this innovative way to get the thing funded. And we went from just like travel basketball with kids in our backyard and on the road in AAU games to turning this thing into a real viable business. Well, who knew that like I thought the licensing would be the hard part or finding the location, getting it licensed and all that. And one by one, I'm thinking like, got it. Like we're gonna pick a city park. Boom. We got that. Oh, we're gonna get licensed through the Department of Children and Family. Boom. That'll help us get funded. Okay, now we got the money. And then our marketing strategy was to target outside of the regular sports kids that we already had to target our old tenants who all had kids. So we were just like, boom, we got built in, you know, kids and credibility. What we didn't factor was we're in the city park with no real shelter, like no personalized shelter. The other buildings were owned by other people. So we're like, we're gonna put up tents and that'll be fine. Yeah, until the rain comes. It was the rainiest first summer of the entire year. It was like 50s and 60s in May in Milwaukee. And you're thinking like, where is the sun? And you're never out at 7 a.m. because now you're not a basketball team that meets up for practice at 11. You're a camp that opens at 7 so parents can come to work. And you just like, whoa, I'm never out here setting up these tents that seemed like a good idea at 6 a.m. only for it to rain by 9, and the tents aren't strong or staked in the ground. So we're pulling them out every day, setting them up. staking them down. And by 11, when the rain comes and blows them all away, and you got to shuffle these kids into a shared space, you're just like, what did I get myself into? But the kids, I mean, they all turned into our bloopers. We got ponchos from the Urban Ecology Center. We got change of clothes, and, you know, we made that thing work. The other thing that we didn't account for was kids can't play basketball all day. And oh yeah, those tenants kids that you targeted, they don't like basketball. So you got kids in this basketball camp. So literally we had to learn the language of camp and the curriculum and how to, like, I had my master's was very focused in youth development. So I had some courses on, you know, making sure that things were age appropriate and it met the interest and developmental level of the kids. And my mom was always kind of like that social emotional educator, just like she was born that way. So I knew, like, to get down to their eye level and how to communicate with them and those sorts of things. But creating a schedule that would keep busy kids with different interests, you know, happy all day long. Yeah, that was definitely learning on the job. And so we have some pictures of the thing soaking wet, super sad, pouty kids.
What year was this? What year was this, Tiff?
Play all day.
How long ago was this? What year was this?
2014.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. That's learning on the fly.
And I guess the glory side of that is that, you know, the next few years we'd like rent one of those pod things, so all of our equipment stayed in place at the park. And then we ended up getting a building, and then we could have an intimate inclement weather space. So we looked at the forecast at the beginning of the week so we would know what was gonna come, instead of just saying, yeah, we'll be out there at 7. Like, Mother Nature was on our schedule. We're running a sports camp. Yeah. You're not allowed to rain today. Yeah, that didn't work.
Yeah. By the way, you know, Sam and I are just like looking at each other going, yeah, like we still deal with this all the time. But yeah, okay.
I did not know. Yeah, we just walked in so blindly, like, you know, the world was, we came up with this great idea and it's going to be perfect. And
yeah, Mother Nature always wins. That's my moral of my story when it comes to that. So along those lines, when I started Liberty Lake Day Camp, you know, with the same sort of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed outlook that Tiff and her husband had, you know, when they started their place, I never would have known that, you know, we're celebrating our 20th anniversary this year from when we started it. And in that time, we have had a flood, and I mean like a legitimate flood, in the middle of color war, by the way. We all showed up to camp that morning, and the place was entirely flooded. All right, and what we're going to do? Well, we can't start swimming in that necessarily, right? So we had an earthquake one summer. Okay, my friends, and shout out to California. I'm sure you guys have had too. And by the way, I don't know if you heard of my mini pod with my friend Dahlia from Israel. We don't have Tomahawk missiles coming through the side, so I'm not complaining. Okay, we had an eclipse a couple of years ago. That was exciting. The parents were freaking out about that. And then last year we had 2 tropical storms. But of course, here goes the first summer at Liberty Lake. We were renting the facility, and because we didn't start our rental agreement until January of that year, it had been a picnic facility, and he had 17 picnics, which at the time, out of 49 days, I was like, okay, 17 days, there's picnics going on. Okay. But he didn't tell me the size of these picnics, that it'd be like 1,000 people, 1,000 cops smoking cigarettes and drinking beer and talking about their you know, affairs. Okay. 1,500 handicapped kids and adults, okay, severely handicapped, that come in those vehicles that have the what you call them, the wheelchair lifts, like right into the middle of my camp, you know, and making quite a mess all over the bathrooms and stuff like that. So for 17 days that first summer, I had to put on a happy face and be like, listen, we just got to get through this, you know, let's just stay away from the picnic people. And, you know, and when the parents came up to pick up their kids, I had to be like, look, you know, this is the truth of the situation, and it won't happen next year. I promise you, I will not agree to be here next year if this is the case. But it was unbelievably stressful to be in. And I think that's part of what stress is in these kind of situations, especially with the pandemic. It's being scared of what you don't really know is going to happen. Right. So like, I was just like, what if this happens? What if this happens? And all that kind of thing. That's why a lot of camps didn't even open last summer, was because of that. But, you know, I've been reading a lot of Brene Brown recently, and I bought 40 copies of Dare to Lead to my top 40 people in my organization, because I was just so proud of them from last summer that we were able to pull it off. And in the book, it talks about courage, right, in these situations. And the way she defines courage, I love it. She says it's being able to move forward when you don't necessarily know how the result will be, right? And that's how we all sort of felt last summer going into this pandemic. We had all the confidence. We had confidence, all right? But did we really know what it was going to be like? No, we didn't. And that's why, to me, what's impressive is not us as the leaders who said, let's do this, right? What's impressive to me is the staff that said, okay. Like, they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to work for me, right? Especially school teachers, right? Like, they could take the summer off, these high school kids. I can't believe their parents let them do that. Like, to me, their parents have more courage than the 16 and 17-year-olds. 16 and 17-year-olds, they don't know which way's up, right? They're just like, okay, which way? Okay, Andy, you tell me what to do, right? But the parents, I mean, for them to be like, oh yeah, go work at a camp in a pandemic, be fine, So anyway, yeah. So that brings me back those memories of those days of those picnics. So
I love, my favorite part of your story is that when you said, I just had to face the parents and tell the truth, like, so often that is the way forward, because people can't reject your truth, right? Like, this is the situation. This is what I'm in. This is why it happened. This is my proposed fix. And I'm going to have to deal with the consequences of whether you stay or you go, but you know the truth. And people really admire, respect that, and that authenticity, seriously. And so often we're paralyzed by the fear or embarrassment, which they may not have even thought any of the things that you thought, but especially when you own it. And even when you don't, to Sam's point, like, because when you run it, you feel like you own it, when you've been somewhere that long, you feel like you own it, or you take ownership in it. And so just the courage to step up and say, yep, this is what happened. Yep, I think it's crazy too. Yep, we're still going to move forward.
Yeah. I mean, as I was telling people when the pandemic hit, I was saying, I think the fact that I used to be in like musicals and theater when I was younger helped, because in those moments, you got to act. You got to act calm. You got to act confident, and you got to act like you know what the hell's going on. All right. Because everybody's looking at you in those situations. And that's what I've been telling all my camp colleagues for the last few months. I've been like, listen, I know that it's uncertain. I know that we don't know what next summer is going to look like, blah, 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 blah. But you need to act like you do and get some kids enrolled and get some staff hired, or you ain't going to have a summer 2021. All right. So yeah, shout out to all my thespian friends out there.
Yeah, I definitely think with me showing horses and having to take care of animals like on a farm, the just do it theme was that's just what you had to do. So it makes you a little more resilient of there's always got to be an answer. There's always got to be a way to do this. And it's stressful when not everything's in your control, like in a pandemic.
Yep. All right, Sam, moving on.
So when you first start your camp, it takes a few years to get rid of camp staff that you inherited that maybe aren't your philosophy. And after a few years, you actually end up with a dream team of staff that are they're your staff. They're perfect. You've trained them well. You all work well together. Everybody gets along. And then between 3 and 5 years, somebody's got to go or they start moving on. So when that first happens, when they first tell you I'm leaving and it's your dream team, you feel like this will never happen again. I'll never find a staff again that'll be this perfect. It's over. I might as well just stop here.
Ugh.
But as you know, you do. There's so many amazing people out there that you do work up to a dream team again, and then it keeps happening over and over.
Yeah.
So don't worry. You will have another dream team.
So Sam, don't you find it comical? Because now that we're old and wise, right? Don't you just love it when one of your people that have been with you for like 5 years or whatever, they come up to you and they're like, Sam, nobody's coming back next summer. It's horrible. How are we going to survive? And they do this whole freak out thing. And meanwhile, you've been doing this for 42 years. All right. I've been doing it for like 27 years or something like that. But so it's like, yeah, I've been on this rodeo before. Like it all works out. I really honestly look at at how we deal with staff. I look at it, I think about, my son's a manager of the Villanova basketball team, works with Jay Wright, right? It's like you get new talent in, and some of them go off to the NBA, or whatever, and then the new ones come in, and like you just got to keep recruiting good people,
Yep.
and you just got to keep it going. And the fact is, we also know this, Sam, that we've seen over the years that you lose one of these people that you think is like instrumental. How could we do it without them kind of people? And then you got new blood in, and they see it in a whole new way, and it ends up being better and different than it was. And it's
Exactly.
a godsend, right? That you got new people. So yeah,
Yeah.
that is an experience thing, that the longer you do it, the more you get used to it. And actually, I like look forward to it. Like when I have to hire a new middle management person, I'm like excited,
Yeah.
you know?
Keeps it fresh. And the people who are freaking out that it's their first time losing their coworkers that are amazing, to them, it feels like life or death. So you
Yeah,
still have to be respectful of the fact that
gotta
they feel like
empathize.
it's the
Yeah,
end.
I know. I know.
Um,
So I always feel like I'm telling them, don't worry, it's going to be fine. And they think I'm just like saying that to placate them. But no, actually, I'm telling you, it's going to be fine. And that's
they-
another thing, too, is that people they don't understand that in an organization, whether it's a camp or, you're making widgets at the local factory, like everyone's replaceable. I hate to say it. Like we're all replaceable. We're all replaceable on this
yeah.
podcast. We're all replaceable in our organizations. We'll find somebody, we'll make it work. That's just plain. Like you said, Sam, there's a lot of fish out there in the ocean. You just got to be optimistic.
Think of
Absolutely.
Beyonce. I think of Beyonce's song. Don't ever get to thinking you're irreplaceable. I always want to sing, and then I just always chicken out. I was about to sing it, and I was like, "Don't you do it? Don't you do
We
it?"
could always edit it, Tiff. Just go for it. For God's sakes.
But it's funny because I've had that same thing, and that wasn't necessarily going to be my story, but I guess to piggyback off of that, I've had a summer. This is 20. I think maybe it was the summer of 2018 where we went from having and I run a small camp, so 50 to 70 kids was like a good year, to I got a great marketing person out of Atlanta who showed me how to like totally transform my business and blow it up on social media. And we went from like 50 kids to like 200. And it was like phenomenal growth. Yes, yes. But there was such a balance between like, okay, stay within the state ratios, make sure you have enough people for the kids. How are you going to train the staff? We can't hire enough staff until we make sure that we have enough kids to pay for this staff. It was such a huge mess. And so it's on the one hand, you're like celebrating that you're growing. And on the other hand, you're just like, how in the hell do we handle this growth? And I think that that is, it was just very, very challenging. What ended up happening was one of our coaches that had been there the prior year had a slew of friends who were also college basketball players now, or advancing to college basketball players. And so now I had this whole basketball team of very cool dudes through the city learning how to sing I want a pepperoni pizza with a whole lot of cheese. And they're looking at me like, what? We came to coach, sports camp, like, what are we doing? And I'm like, you got to trust me. It just works. My saving grace was I had friends from the Milwaukee YMCA. Shout out to the entire Milwaukee YMCA staff, team leadership, all of that. They always, and I guess this speaks to like collaboration over competition. They always threw us on their back, and so they let all of my staff come to their trainings, and we would add to the material for the local branch that was close to us. We couldn't take kids that were less than 5, so we would throw them our kids that the siblings of our kids who were 4 and under, or any inquiries we got, because we were blowing up so much. So it was definitely a give and take, but they let us come to their training. And in that way, where I was weak in terms of, knowing how to train people who had never been in the camp methodology, they were able to just like get in there. And because they were around other people who were doing it, they felt bad if they didn't also participate. And to this day, that is my strongest group of coaches. Like, and they come back and they take those lessons. I think we talked about this on one of the other podcasts. They take those lessons that they learn at camp to help them get through like their collegiate struggles and all of that. So it's great to see it come full circle and be a win-win. But at the beginning of that summer, I was like, oh, maybe all money isn't good money because I don't know how we're gonna do this. And like we can't devalue the program by having so many kids. So how on earth do we do this? But just like we said at the beginning of the podcast, I think that sometimes we're thrown into situations and we figure it out along the way. That, control the controllables. And there's this woman that I love who hosts events, and she always says, I know she didn't make it up, but she always says, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so it's just like you were looking at these big, huge, unimaginable situations, and you just gotta like take the next step and take the next step and figure it out. You try to do that whole thing at once.
Yeah. My new one with the elephant metaphor, my new one is crawl, walk, run. Right?
Literally.
Yeah.
Do what you can with what you have. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of camp's issues can be resolved with one affirmation or quote or some happy thought that you just have to put in your head to will it into existence.
Yeah. And everybody's sick of the term pivot and all. And I remember in the midst of the pandemic, I got one of them Go Camp Pro daily emails from Matt Hansberger and Travis and all and Ruby. And it said, it's not a pivot, it's a swerve, right? Like you were planning on doing this and now you're going to swerve into that, right? So now I think about that all the time too. Like I'm surfing, I'm just going to swerve into something.
Seriously, because it also, from that metaphorical perspective, if you think about a basketball game and how you can pivot and you can only pivot on the one foot, like pivoting is rough. So a swerve,
especially when you lose your dribble. Sure.
It might be a pivot, but a swerve sounds so much easier. It sounds so much more fun. It sounds so much more doable.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's in our mind, right? So how we think about it.
Right. Well, if you to continue with the basketball metaphors, think of like a really good point guard, a really good playmaker that's out there. That's what you are in your organization. And some of these people, like, you watch them do it. You're like, how in the world did they come up with that? Would they find a way to the hoop? Did they see that pass? And that's what we're doing.
Legit.
Right?
Absolutely.
We're the Kyle Lowrys or whatever, that are out there doing that. All right. So I just got to say that I want to thank CRS Commercial Recreation Specialists, ladies and gentlemen, the fine purveyors of the best recreation solutions to keep camp going strong. Check out their website at crs4rec.com. And I want to talk about the commercial recreation specialist product called the Zoom Flume, which I bought. It is a giant, think about like a slip and slide, except it's inflated, like sort of like a moon bounce kind of thing. So you go get a running jump, you go diving on the Zoom Flume, and of course it's nice and soft because it's like a moon bounce, and you go flying into wherever. Now you can just go flying onto the grass into a big pile of bubbles or a baby pool, like a little, plastic baby pool. You can do that. Or, if you're lucky enough to have a lake or a pool, you can use that too. So the Zoom Flume is not that expensive, and you can blow it up. And I use it on super hot days. And guess what, folks? I use it on super rainy days. And that's a future podcast we got to be doing. We're going to do a hot day and rainy day podcast, especially Tiff reminded me about the Mother Nature stuff. That is super important, especially since a lot of people have been forced outside. They're not used to being outside. So anyway, Zoom Flume, crs4rec.com. CRS is serious about fun. All right. So here we go. So the home stretch. Okay. So here's my third and final entry to the grit and resiliency. What does not kill you makes you stronger. And so those of you that know me know that I've had a lot to deal with at Liberty Lake and in my personal life in like the last decade. So at Liberty Lake, basically they're trying to start build warehouses all around us. Turns out where Liberty Lake is located is like a great location of an intersection of highways, which by the way is great for camp. getting people to come to your camp, but not great when the entire distribution economy wants to start building Amazon warehouses everywhere around you. Okay. So yeah, all my beautiful farm fields around here are turning into warehouses, and I've been fighting them for 10, 12 years and had to start coalitions and nonprofits. And I had to spend hundreds of thousands of camper tuitions dollars with lawyers and stuff like that. No fun at all. Very stressful, especially in the middle of the summer. And the township was completely behind the warehouse people and fighting me. Right. So here's this great camp serving 1,000 kids every summer, this great, like, you think like, and, we would be seen as like this great thing for the town, but the town's like, no, 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 no. Tax dollars. We need to taxable. Meanwhile, these warehouses come in here and they don't even pay any taxes for 10, 20 years. They get these great, ridiculous deals. And then guess what happens after 10, 20 years? They close it down and they move to Pennsylvania or something like that. Right. So, but these local town people, they mean well, but they just don't understand the big picture, and they screw the local guy, the person, the small business, of course. And then on top of that, well, that's all going on because that took place for a period of years. It's still going on to some degree. The Turnpike, which borders my property, New Jersey Turnpike, famous Paul Simon and Garfunkel song, right? They did a widening project where they knocked down all my trees that were between the Turnpike and me and my property, right? And while they were doing it, they had big mountains and mountains of dirt, construction dirt, and then it was a rainy spring, and it all went into my lake. And then all of a sudden my lake got really shallow and started growing stuff in the middle of the summer that it never did because the sunlight went right through. So I just finished dredging my lake. And that was a 12-year ordeal, matching the warehouses in the same time. And as a matter of fact, right now, Liberty Lake Day Camp, the contents of my lake are sitting on my soccer field, which is now covered in about 3 feet of snow. So I have no idea when I'm going to have a soccer field again. and by the way, it needs to be a parking lot for the Renaissance Fair, which is in May. So yeah, a little stressed out with that kind of thing. This is just typical of Liberty Lake. And while this was all going on, my 11-year-old son got leukemia. So while this was all happening, right, my wife got completely out of the picture because she just became the caregiver for my son. And he had, hardcore leukemia with chemo and all that kind of stuff. And then we thought he was better. And then he relapsed and we had hardcore leukemia with chemo again. And it didn't work. And we were like, oh no. And then he had immunotherapy and we thought that worked. And then it didn't work. And then he had a stem cell transplant. This is 7 years, this poor kid. And he's doing fine now. But for those 7 years, it was extremely stressful. And then just to put it on top, the one last thing, like, I guess in the middle of all that, my daughter was a senior in high school and she was driving to school in the snow and she got in a head-on collision and got totally whacked, jaws of life, blood on the brain, super concussion, right? Her performing arts career, had to swerve, let's call that again. And yeah, so all happening simultaneously while trying to run a camp. Right. So during that time, I sort of just got used to being in a state of, controlling my stress and dealing with what I can deal with. And like Tiff was saying before, you just do what you can do. Right. Like I just sort of got into a mode where you would see a situation and say, you know what, I'm just going to do what I can. I'm going to try as best as I can. And however it turns out, it turns out. Like I can't control. All I can control is myself, what I do and how I react to things, right? I can't make the future, all right, but I can control how I deal with it while it's going on. And, it sort of just changed my outlook on so many things. And then you think about it, then the pandemic hit and, it's not like I shrugged my shoulders and said, so what, right? Like, I mean, I took this thing seriously, but I was also like, you know what, if I can figure out how to do it, then I'm going to do it. Like, why not? I've sort of dealt with these tough situations before. And again, I give a lot more credit to my people around me and all the way down to my 16-year-old counselors, and the 1,000 kids whose parents thought it would be safe enough to send their kids to camp this summer and all that kind of thing. I give them more credit than I give me because I'm just now a regular, positive, optimistic person. I just force forward. So there you go. Resilience and grit done for today from me.
Well, Andy, I've got a really good quote for you that I love. Leaders don't force you to follow them. They invite you on a journey. And that's why your people followed you. You invited them on the journey and they bought in and then you worked together. If they hadn't bought in, then yeah, that would have been a problem.
Yeah, it's true. And they were all very supportive during all those trials and tribulations with the warehouses and the turnpikes and the cancer and all that kind of things, you know. I mean, what we found during these kind of situations is that, you know, it's really easy to be like part of something when everything's going well, right? But when things start getting all treacherous for people, you know, the human spirit of people really does come out. And that's, you know, you saw this with the pandemic and all. We all talked about how grateful, you know, the families were, the stakeholders, the staff, anyone that dealt with us this summer. They were just so grateful. And it was the same thing when we were dealing with all these tough situations in my personal life and in camp. You just saw everybody wanted to help. Everybody wanted to pitch in. What can I do? How can I help? And all that kind of vibe. And, you know, the thousands of people that signed the petitions for the websites and went out and hung up signs and showed up at the municipal buildings like it was like a Frankenstein movie with the pitchforks and the torches and things like that, you know. And then, you know, with my son, all the t-shirts everybody would be wearing and all the gifts and all the meals and all the support and love, like, you know, it really makes you feel good about the human spirit. You know, I mean, when we were all done with this crazy ass stressful summer, we all kicked back and we were like, wow, like the human spirit is real and it is awesome and it is beautiful.
It's amazing what people can do together.
Mhm.
I 100% agree. And I mean, so thankful that your son is okay. And I can't even imagine, you know, they say we won't get more things than we can handle, but my Lord, you just be like, okay, okay, hey, I'm I'm pretty sure I had enough, you know, all that I can handle. So I can only imagine.
Don't, don't
Yeah.
Um,
trust me so much. I can't
Yeah.
take anymore.
yeah, I wish you didn't trust me so much. It's a real thing. So no, I mean that's the granddaddy of all stories right there.
Yeah. Well, my final one is, so the best part about this business, the fact that we work with children, I don't think I've ever had a summer where there hasn't been a brand new situation. You know, kids always bring something new to the table, and I'm constantly amazed, for good or for bad, what they come up with. So, other than that, if you're working the same job for years and years, you want to keep it, find a way to keep it exciting and fresh. And for me, the answer was to get involved in the association, to get, you know, become a visitor, to so you can visit other camps and see the cool stuff they're doing. Um, to start sharing your knowledge, like doing speeches or contributing to books or getting to go on a podcast. So, you know, 10 years ago, I would never have thought that I would do the podcast. You know, it wasn't even around back then. So, whoever's starting out in this job, there's going to be something that you hit 10 years from now that wasn't even a possibility now. So keep looking out for all those new and upcoming things that you can get involved in and try out and make it exciting for yourself and fresh for yourself so that it is a great job every year.
No, I think that's so good. And one of the things that I love most about all the stories that we've told is that there's always an upside on the end. Like, oh, it was going crazy, 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 crazy. But then, you know, like so it's like all good movies, but except for it's just our real lives. So
Yeah.
it's just
Well, you know,
like
Tiff, it's what we've been saying since the end of last summer. It's silver linings, baby.
the real life.
Right? I mean every podcast now we hear all this great stuff that has come from so many horrible, tough, stressful situations. I mean, I'm going to put in the show notes my son's TED talk that he did about his journey. It's pretty inspirational. A lot of camps actually used it last year in their orientation. Um, but basically, just to sum it up, it's just like, you know, you don't sweat the small stuff anymore once you've been through the big stuff. Plain and simple.
Literally.
I've shared his TED talk with other people too. It was really good.
I've never seen it, so
Oh,
Yeah.
we shall.
love to see it.
All right, Tiff.
My final story. I guess it's about uh getting to the top of the mountain and realizing that you do not like the view, or like that the view is not what you thought it would be. And so really, I guess an ode to all like um founder owned camps or entrepreneur, you know, camps with an entrepreneurial twist. Again, I talk often about how my husband and I founded this camp, and you know we had these big dreams and aspirations for these kids, and in our work with them, we the camp is called Purposeful Play. play is an acronym, positive learning through athletics for youth. And we thought we were just doing like a sports camp where some kids could come and have fun, etc. We learned through rough and tough experience that and the acronym was just by chance, right? Like we just went through the dictionary and kind of picked letters that went with the word. But through rough and tough experience, we learned that positive learning really did need to come before the athletics for youth. And that wasn't something that we had anticipated. So just, I guess, the trials and tribulations of managing all of the personalities and to make sure that we were literally delivering life lessons at camp was something that was very transformative for me. And again, as an entrepreneur, you always have like this revenue goal in mind. We were accountants and finance people. We needed to make, the same amount of money that we left on the table and or more, and let the work be fulfilling, etc. And so unfortunately, in the midst of all of the running of the business, we learned that we were not the perfect match, right? And so that we really could not coexist and work together and raise a family together and do all these great things together, and that our ideals of what not only business looked like, but home and life were just we were very, very different people. So at the pinnacle of success, where we've like tripled our enrollment and we have all these kids and the business is more profitable than ever, we're realizing that this marriage just is not going to work. And so how do we not let whatever toxicity is happening behind the scenes spill into this great thing that we've produced, and that is, being acknowledged by congressional people in the state in all sorts of ways. And so really just like working through how to live out behind the scenes all of the ideals that you teach at camp. You teach resilience and problem solving, you teach positive words and not using words as weapons, and just like everyone's a friend, or just like working through your differences. And so I think we were challenged, but also I believe that the spirit of camp and the power of play throughout the years taught us the skills that we needed in order to forge through something very personally difficult, right? And so the other lesson, or the other big mountain that had to be overcome was, okay, now what do we do with this great big thing that we've put together in this city as we look to go to different places? And so I'm very grateful that I was able to swerve. I would have said pivot historically, but and look at opening a camp in my hometown of Chicago, and being able to have him in Wisconsin just focus on just the sports part. Because if we're honest, he only liked the sports part. He didn't like the camp part. And I loved the camp part, even though I never intended on the camp part. So really just following the model of doing what you really love, like walking in your purpose, understanding your why. We talked about being at work and spending so much time there and not being around a boss that you don't jam with. So imagine starting a business and you creating this thing that is this thing that you don't jam with. And so I'm very grateful that we were able to both take the parts that we loved and to go in separate ways and flourish in with those things. Plus, I realized that curriculum and the creation of the curriculum was one of the things that was most difficult for me, but it's something that I worked at a ton. And because of that, I've been able to like go off and I'm working with a professor now to like package my curriculum. And so even as camp looks very different than what we thought, and that's what I mean when I say like you picture what's going to happen at the mountaintop and then you get there and you're just like, wait a minute. But so camp for me right now is very different than what I thought. I'm not hands-on every day with the kids, though we did run last summer, but more so like consulting other programs and showing how our curriculum, how you can use sport or art or photography or any interest that you might have and turn that into a camp. And really, in this way, I'm so much more fulfilled because I not only get to do it myself in pockets, but I'm also helping create other camp opportunities for kids that wouldn't ordinarily have it. And so So yeah, I think it just shows the grit and the tenacity of people, and how when you really step into, what means the most to you, and you follow your why, that like you can't go wrong. And even when crazy things happen in between, when you follow, like when you just take that one next step, great things happen. And there's been nothing but opportunity after opportunity since I made that step. It was scary, it was weird, it was different, it was all the things, but it works. It works.
Right.
And so
And Tiff told us before we started today that she got her first offer to do a corporate speaking gig.
I
And
did.
that's awesome. We're really psyched for you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a cool thing. Yeah, it's such a funny thing to get to the top of the mountain. It's not like what you thought it would be. And yeah, you can say that about marriage. You can say it about your career, all that kind of stuff. I mean, when I sat down with Ben Applebaum and he was like, "Oh, you should be a character actor. It's awesome," and all this kind of thing, right? I didn't think that I'd be 25 years in and I'd be like, "Damn, I'm working harder now than I ever worked. When is this going to get easy?" Right? It's just actually getting harder. I feel like,
Yeah.
you know. Ugh. But yeah, if you love what you do, then I'm not going to say it doesn't feel like you're working it. I'm not saying that,
I,
Tiff. I'm not
I
saying that.
literally start my talks when I talk about entrepreneurism. I say, they say if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. That's an absolute lie.
Absolute
But
lie.
but you won't mind doing you won't quit. You won't quit when you get tired, because you actually are, vetted into the work, and you believe in the power of the work. And when you're not doing what you love, and then the tough time comes, it's much easier to throw your hat in the ring. But when you're doing what you love, you'll keep at it. You'll work toward it. You'll find your way to swerve. You'll find your way to pivot. You'll find your way to find that crevice, that little piece of the thing
Mhm.
that you love. Because yeah, the fact that it's more work.
Yeah,
It's harder work.
I had my mic off, Tiff, but I did a laugh when you were like, "Oh, look, my husband and I, we're gonna go into this thing and we're gonna make more money than when we were in all those." I was just like, "Oh yeah."
It's crazy. I will say though, I mean, we were able to be very profitable, but the amount of out, like if we looked at the per hour rate, yeah,
Right.
no way.
Right.
Like we're pennies.
Yep. Yep. No, that's, being a small business owner. There it is. The summary right there. Less than minimum wage. Okay. So, before we get to, because I have a special, a pretty cool day camp tip of the week. So I do want to do that. But I just want to give a shout out to our friends at AM Skyer Insurance, all right, who happen to be the insurance carriers of Ben Applebaum and all his camps back in the day. AM Skyer, the leading insurance and strategic partner for so many of our finest camps in America for 101 years. AM Skyer has been supporting camps in PR, legal, health, facility management, general safety, and more. Experience the AM Skyer difference at amskyer.com. And today, I actually filled out my little AM Skyer online form so that I could have my child abuse trainer come to camp that they provide. It's part of the deal, no extra charge. And they have such a stable of luminaries. I mean, they have retired camp professionals who are phenomenal. We have Kathy Fisher come and do it for us, a social worker who's great. I mean, Norm Friedman, for God's sakes, he's literally there. There's nobody better than that guy. So, they're AM Skyer partners. They do a really good job of employing on a part-time basis a whole bunch of really experienced and smart camp luminaries, so that when things happen and a camp needs some support, they basically have a stable of camp mentors that they can assign to a situation, that have been in those shoes before, who really understand what you're going through, right? So not just PR, not just legal, but like, someone that's going to say, "Hey, listen, when this kind of thing happened in my camp, all right, this is how we handled it," and it's just really nice to have that. So amskyer.com, 100 years, my man, Jeff, Amy, Henry. All right. So my program tip of the week is that I was talking to my friend Courtney Young, camp director down in Florida. And by the way, shout out to my camp directors in the Southern Hemisphere who had to run camp last summer in the extreme heat and a pandemic. Okay. None of us can complain up here in Chicago and New York and all that kind of thing in Northern California. When these people were in 100-degree heat, okay, and had to be inside for big chunks of time and deal with all that, which is tough being indoors in a pandemic. And then, with the rates spiking and all those kind of things. So anyway, Courtney and I stay in touch because he did some Northeast camping for a while, and he sent me some information on a thing, on a mask, because we're all talking about these masks and it sucks at camp. The number one reason it sucks is because you can't see people's face, right? You can't see their smile, right? So he's got this this company. It's cagemask.com, cage mask, and it is basically a gator that has a window in it, and it does not fog, and it's easy to breathe in. And it's made by a bunch of doctors down there in Southern Florida who have figured it out. So that means if you can breathe in it in the Southern Florida heat, then you can breathe in it anywhere in the country. And it looks super cool. They're not cheap, like $30 each, but I'm thinking of getting them for my top staff who have to be in masks. So in New Jersey, the groups don't have to be masked up of kids and counselors, but the people who work with them do. So I think it's a pretty cool thing. You've seen these you've seen junky versions of these around, and this company has done a pretty good job. So I will put the link in the show notes, and hopefully we'll be in masks this summer, most likely, but we'll be able to see some smiles too.
I'll definitely check that out because I think it's important for the kids to see, right now they're trying to figure out our expressions by whether or not our eyes are crinkling.
No, I know, it's so sad.
It would be really nice for them to see our mouths, but mine is a new app called Monday.com, and it's kind of like Excel on steroids. It's very user friendly. What I'm using it for right now is I'm standards chair for Illinois. So I had to do a chart of camps and then a chart of visitors or reviewers. And then as the camps handed in their AARs or annual accreditation report, then I would have to link a reviewer with the camp and then move it down to the next chart. And so I had, it just was so easy. It was so easy. One click and you could have everyone organized and see in a snapshot how many people still needed to do what and what was already done. So Monday.com, they do a free month. You could check it out for a month for free, and they don't ask for credit cards or anything up front. So that was kind of nice.
Awesome. All right, Tiff, you got anything?
I don't have a tip prepared.
All right.
I do all this. I use all these systems for random things. So I guess I'll give some system tips. I think if people if people are still doing paper registration, clearly we can get rid of some of that. JotForm, JOTFORM is.
Oh yeah,
is
they
really
were
cool.
they were exhibitors at the ACA National Conference. They actually had a booth.
And they did a whole series last year on like just specific to summer camp. So I don't know how they got hooked in, but I was using them long before that. So once they did that, it was very, very helpful. If there's any newbie camp people out there who are founders of camps, I use Canva, CANVA, for all of my like graphic design stuff. And it's easy. You don't have to, bootstrap and try to find somebody to do your flyers and and your social media graphics, etc.
Somebody from the Park District meeting today was talking about that Canva.
Yep. So it works really, really well. It's simple. It's like template, drag and drop.
And there's a free version, as there is for JotForms too, which is really important.
Both. So yeah, and when you look good and you have your systems in place, it definitely makes your parents feel more confident, and when you feel more confident, you feel less stressed. And so yeah, those are two platforms that I use regularly that have relieved my stress.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. So forge forward, keep your head held high. Remember, right, that when you make mistakes, when you go through tough situations, those are the kind of things that just make you stronger in the end. Okay, they suck while they're going on. All right, no ifs, ands, or buts on that. Okay, but you'll look back and you'll be like, you know what, I'll be ready for the next fight. Plain and simple. All right, so we want to thank our Go Camp Pro team, AM Skyer and Commercial Recreation Specialist, for allowing us to bring this podcast to you. If you like what you hear, you should subscribe to the Day Camp Pod on your favorite podcast platform. Check out the show notes from this and other episodes at daycamppodcast.com, as well as contact information for our show, our many guests that we usually have, and our wonderful co-hosts, Sam and Tiff. Thanks for listening and making yourself a better day camp professional. We'll be back next week with a mini pod, and in 2 weeks with another full episode of the Day Camp Pod.